The wind has been blowing for 2 days. A man lies on his side beneath a desert shrub, knees pulled up to his chest, sandals torn through at the heel. He has not eaten since yesterday. He has not slept. The shrub is a rotum, a broom tree, and it casts almost no shade. The heat above him shimmers. The dust beneath his cheek is the color of old bone. He is crying quietly into the dirt, and he is asking God to let him die. His name was Elijah. And the strangest thing about the moment you are looking at is this. Yesterday, he had stood on a mountain called Carmel and called fire down from the sky in front of his entire nation. He had defeated 450 enemies in a single afternoon. He had been the most powerful prophet in Israel. 24 hours later, he was here, under a shrub, begging God to take his life. We will come back to this tree. We will come back to what God said next. But first, you need to understand something about that man and his story. Because Elijah was not the first to run, and he was not the last. There is a pattern hidden in the Bible. Once you see it, you will not be able to unsee it. This is not a video about cowardice. This is not a video about weak faith. This is not a video about people who lost their nerve. This is a video about 7 men across more than 1,000 years of Bible history who all received a direct calling from the God of the universe, and whose very first response was the same. They ran. Here's what most people miss. We tell ourselves the prophets of the Bible were brave. We tell ourselves they were the holy ones, the chosen ones, the ones who said yes on the spot because they had the kind of faith we do not. We tell ourselves they were different. They were not. Moses ran into a desert and stayed for 40 years. Jonah paid for his own ticket to the other end of the world. Gideon was hiding in a winepress when the angel arrived. Jeremiah said he was too young. Saul hid behind the luggage on his own coronation day. Elijah, the man under the shrub, walked 120 miles into the wilderness and asked God to kill him. 7 men, 7 different ways to run. One God who refused to let any of them get away. By the end of the next 30 minutes, you will know all 7 of them by name. You will see the pattern, and you will see something else. Something the painters and the Sunday schools and even most pastors will not tell you. You will see yourself, because to find the first one, to find where the pattern begins, we have to walk back, past the burning bush, past the chariots of Pharaoh, past the desert wandering, to a small Israelite village called Ophrah in the high country of Manasseh, where a frightened young man was threshing wheat in the bottom of a stone pit, hiding from his own life. His name was Gideon. The village was called Ophrah. It sat in the high country of Manasseh, where the wind came down off the hills hard and clean. You threshed wheat on a hilltop. You spread the cut stalks on a stone floor, beat them with a wooden flail until the kernels broke free, and tossed the whole pile into the air with a wide fork. The wind blew the chaff away and dropped the heavy grain at your feet. That was how every farmer in Israel did it. But not Gideon. Gideon was threshing his wheat in a winepress. A winepress was a stone pit dug into the ground, 6 feet deep, meant for crushing grapes with bare feet. There was no wind down there. The chaff would not separate. The work would take 10 times as long, but the dust would not rise above the rim of the pit, and the raiders would not see him. The Midianites had been coming for 7 years. They rode in on camels from the eastern desert at the start of every harvest, swept across the valley like locusts, and took everything. The Israelites had stopped farming the open fields and started hiding their food in caves. Gideon was a young man hiding wheat in a stone pit so his family would not starve. He was terrified. He was exhausted. He had been doing this his whole adult life. You can almost see him down there, jumping at every shadow, listening for hooves. And then the angel sat down under the oak tree at the edge of the pit, looked at him and said, "The Lord is with thee, thou mighty man of valor." The Hebrew is Gibber Shail, a warrior, a man of strength and courage. The phrase is military, the kind of thing you say to a general before a battle. And Gideon, sweating in a wine pit, jumping at shadows, looked up and answered like any of us would have answered. If the Lord is with us, why has all this happened? Where are all the miracles our fathers told us about? Then he said the part underneath, "My family is the poorest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house." So Gideon asked for proof. The angel gave him fire from a rock. Then Gideon, still not convinced, laid a sheepskin on the threshing floor and asked God to make it wet with dew while the ground stayed dry. God did. Then Gideon asked God to reverse it. Wet ground, dry fleece. God did that too. The man God called Mighty Man of Valor needed 3 separate miracles before he would even start. If you have ever asked God for one more sign, just one more, before you would obey, Gideon is your patron saint. But it gets stranger. The next runaway was not a young man. Moses was 80 years old when God called him. 40 of those years he had spent as a prince in Pharaoh's palace. 40 more he had spent on the backside of the wilderness, tending sheep for a Midianite priest named Jethro. He had married Jethro's daughter, a woman named Zipporah. He had 2 sons. He named the first one Gershom, which means stranger there, because he never stopped feeling like one. He named the second one Eliezer, which means God is my help. But by then, he was not really expecting any. The Jewish historian Josephus, writing in the 1st century after Christ, said, Moses fled into territory so remote that no one had been there before him. Not just empty, untracked. If you have ever felt forgotten so completely that even the world seems to have lost the place you walked, Moses lived in that feeling for 40 years. And then the bush caught fire, not consumed, just burning. And the voice from inside the flames called him by name, twice. Moses, Moses. He answered, "Here am I." What followed was not a triumphant yes. It was an embarrassing negotiation. Watch how many excuses you can count. Excuse 1, who am I that I should go unto Pharaoh? Excuse 2, when they ask me your name, what shall I tell them? Excuse 3, they will not believe me. Excuse 4, O my Lord, I am not eloquent. I am slow of speech and of a slow tongue. Excuse 5, and this one made God angry? O my Lord, send by the hand of whomever you want to send. Send literally anyone else. 5 excuses. 5. From a man who had personally heard the voice of God speaking from a burning bush. The Hebrew for slow of speech is kibad peh. It means heavy of mouth. Some scholars think Moses had a real speech impediment, a stammer, possibly a damaged jaw from the killing he had committed 40 years earlier. This was not just stage fright. This was a man who had practiced telling himself he could not speak for 4 decades. He had gotten very good at believing it. If you have ever given 5 excuses in a row to avoid something you knew you were called to do, you are not alone. You are in the company of the man who would eventually part the Red Sea. Stay with me. The third runaway was not 80 years old. He was a teenager. His name was Jeremiah. He came from Anathoth, a small priestly village 3 miles north of Jerusalem. Scholars estimate he was somewhere between 17 and 20 when God called him. Not yet married, not yet a working priest, still living under his father's roof. The kind of age where you do not even know what you want to do for a living, let alone whether God is about to drag you into a national catastrophe to do it. And here is what God said to him: Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee, and I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. It is one of the most stunning sentences in the Hebrew Bible. It is also terrifying. Imagine being 17 and being told that the God who exists outside of time has already planned your career, your suffering, your ministry, your enemies, your tears, and your only job is to walk into them. Jeremiah's answer was short. In English, it reads, "Ah, Lord God, I cannot speak. I am a child." The Hebrew is nar. It is the same word used elsewhere for the boy who carried Saul's armor into battle, the boy who ran messages between army camps, the boy who was not yet a man. Jeremiah was not saying, "I am young." He was saying, "I am a kid. I have nothing. I cannot do this." And here is what God did. God did not give him a fleece. God did not give him fire from a rock. God did not let him list 5 excuses. God reached out and touched his mouth, and the words came. The boy who said, "I cannot speak," became the prophet who could not be silenced. 40 years later, after watching his nation burn and his city fall, Jeremiah would say something almost no one quotes. He would say the word of God was inside him like a fire shut up in his bones. He would say that if he tried to hold it in, his ribs would crack from the pressure. If you are 17 right now and you think God could not possibly want to use you because you are too young, Jeremiah is your verse. The mouth he touched was a teenager's mouth. You have met 3 runaways: a farmer hiding in a wine pit, an 80-year-old shepherd making 5 excuses to a burning bush, a teenager who said he was too young. You have not met the 4 who ran the hardest. One hid behind the luggage at his own coronation. One bought a ticket to the end of the world. One collapsed in the desert and asked God to kill him. If you want to see all of them, hit subscribe right now. The pattern only gets stranger from here. The 4th runaway was about to become a king. The whole nation had gathered at a town called Mizpah. The prophet Samuel was old. Israel had demanded a king like all the other nations had. God had reluctantly agreed, and the moment had arrived. Samuel cast lots, the way priests did in those days, to find the tribe God had chosen. The lot fell on Benjamin, then the family. The lot fell on Matri, then the man. The lot fell on a young man named Saul, son of Kish, tall, strong, head and shoulders above any other Israelite alive. The kind of man you would cast for a king in a movie. There was only one problem. Saul was not there. Pay attention to this. The entire nation was gathered. The prophet was holding the oil. The lot had been cast 3 times. The crowd was looking around for the king, and the king was missing. So they asked God where he was, and God answered, "Behold, he hath hid himself among the stuff." The Hebrew word for stuff is kilim. It means baggage, gear, the supply train, the bags piled against the back of the encampment where the donkeys were tied up. Saul, the future king of Israel, the tallest man in the country, was crouched behind the luggage. The crowd ran out. They pulled him from behind the bags. They brought him forward. He stood there, head down, 6.5 feet tall, soaked in sweat, looking like a child caught hiding from a punishment. And Samuel poured the oil on him anyway. Watch what happens to a man who builds his life around hiding. The man who started his reign by hiding behind the luggage never stopped hiding. He hid from David when David started winning his battles. He hid from God when God stopped answering his prayers. He hid from the truth about himself for 40 years. And on the last night of his life, he visited a witch at Endor in disguise, in the dark, hoping the dead prophet Samuel could tell him what to do. The boy who hid behind the bags died on Mount Gilboa the next morning. His body was nailed to a wall. His head was cut off. And the kingdom passed to a shepherd who had hidden from no one. If you have ever organized your life around avoiding the thing God called you to do, Saul is your warning. There was a proverb about Saul that survived in Israel for centuries. The proverb asked a question, and the question was this: is Saul also among the prophets? Because once, briefly, the Spirit of God came on Saul and he prophesied. The neighbors were shocked. The man who hid behind the luggage was suddenly speaking the word of God in the streets. But even his prophesying was a form of running. He spoke under compulsion, not under love. He carried the gift, but he never opened it. And by the end, the Spirit of God had left him entirely. And this is where it gets remarkable. The fifth runaway lived 800 years after Saul. His name was Jonah, son of Amittai, from a small village called Gath-Hepher in Galilee. He was a working prophet. He had already given prophecies to the king of Israel. He was a known man. And then one day God said to him, "Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city." Nineveh was the capital of Assyria, 500 miles to the northeast, the most violent military force in the ancient world. They skinned their enemies alive, stacked the corpses of conquered cities into pyramids, and would, within a generation, march into northern Israel and erase 10 of the 12 tribes from history. God was asking Jonah to walk into that city and warn it that judgment was coming. Jonah did the math, and Jonah went the other way. He walked west to the port city of Joppa. He found a ship bound for Tarshish. Tarshish was at the far end of the Mediterranean, in what is now Spain, about 2,500 miles in the opposite direction, the literal western edge of the known ancient world. And then the verse says something the English translation almost loses. He paid the fare thereof. Jonah did not stow away. Jonah did not get carried off. Jonah walked up to the captain, opened his purse, and paid for the ticket himself. He spent his own money to escape his calling. The Hebrew word for what Jonah did is barak, to flee, to slip away. It is the same word used elsewhere for a slave running from a master. The picture is not of a brave man choosing a different path. The picture is of a slave dropping his work and bolting for the horizon. And then the storm came. The Mediterranean does not usually storm in late summer. This one did. The wind shrieked. The mast cracked. The sailors, hardened men, polytheists, used to bad weather, were terrified. They threw the cargo overboard. They prayed to every god they had ever heard of. And while they were screaming into the sky, Jonah was somewhere below deck, asleep. It is one of the strangest sentences in the Bible. The only man on the boat who knew the storm was about to kill him was the one snoring through it. And maybe you understand him a little. Because when the storm in your life is the direct consequence of your own running, the easiest thing in the world is to fall asleep below deck, to pretend the noise outside is not about you, to pretend that if you just close your eyes, the wind will stop on its own. The captain found him. They cast lots to find out who was guilty. The lot fell on Jonah. He confessed. And then he said the line that nobody quotes, "Take me up and cast me forth into the sea." The Jewish historian Josephus recorded the Jonah story in his Antiquities of the Jews. He named the Assyrian king. He treated it as history, not parable. Whatever you think happened on that boat, the first century Jews thought it really happened. And then the fish swallowed him. You know the rest of the story. 3 days, the fish vomited him onto the beach. Nineveh repented, and Jonah, the prophet who had finally obeyed, sat under a vine on a hillside and asked God to kill him because his enemies had been forgiven. Jonah ran. Then he ran from his obedience. Then he ran from the mercy God showed to people he did not want forgiven. The book of Jonah does not end with him at peace. It ends with God asking him a question and Jonah refusing to answer. But there was one runaway who ran further than any of these. He had just won the greatest battle of his life. And 24 hours later, he was 120 miles into the wilderness, collapsed under a tree, begging God to kill him. To understand the man under the tree, you have to understand the day before. 24 hours earlier, Elijah had stood on the summit of Mount Carmel, alone against 450 prophets of the storm god Baal. Queen Jezebel had imported the cult from Phoenicia years before, and the whole nation had drifted. Elijah was the last visible prophet of the living God left in the country, and he had called for a contest. Whose God could send fire down on the altar, Baal or the Lord? The prophets of Baal danced. They cut themselves with knives. They cried all day. Their God did not answer. Then Elijah soaked his altar with water 3 times, water in a drought year, and prayed one sentence, and the fire came down from heaven. Elijah killed the 450 prophets. He outran a royal chariot back to Jezreel, 20 miles on foot in a thunderstorm. He should have been on top of the world. Then the queen sent a messenger to his door. The message was an oath. So let the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make thy life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. By sundown tomorrow, you are dead. Elijah ran. Elijah was not depressed because he had failed. He was not depressed because he was a coward. He was not depressed because his faith was weak. He was depressed because he had just done the most spiritually exhausting work of his life, and there was no one waiting on the other side to carry it with him. The fire on Carmel had not changed the queen. It had not changed the priests of Baal who survived. It had not changed his nation. He had given everything he had. The empire was still standing. The queen was still on her throne. And now she wanted him dead. So he ran. He ran south, past Beersheba, the last town in Judah, and one more day into the wilderness alone, and he collapsed. The tree from the beginning of this video is here. The wind has been blowing for 2 days. A man lies on his side beneath a desert shrub, knees pulled up to his chest, sandals torn through at the heel. The shrub is a rotten. The dust beneath his cheek is the color of old bone. He prays one prayer. It is enough. Now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am not better than my fathers. And then, instead of striking him down, instead of rebuking him, instead of arguing, God sends an angel with bread. The angel touches him. He wakes. There is a cake baked on hot coals beside his head and a jar of water. He eats. He sleeps. The angel touches him again. Arise and eat, because the journey is too great for thee. Elijah eats a second time. And then, in the strength of that food, he walks for 40 days and 40 nights through the wilderness until he reaches a mountain. The mountain is Horeb, Sinai, the same mountain where Moses received the law 400 years earlier, the same peak where Israel met God in fire and cloud. He finds a cave, and he hides in it. The word of the Lord comes to him in the cave. The question is one sentence long. What doest thou here, Elijah? Here's the part nobody tells you. Elijah does not answer with theology. He does not answer with prayer. He answers with the thing he has been telling himself for 40 days of walking. I, even I only am left, and they seek my life to take it away. I am the only one. I have been forgotten. No one is coming for me. It is the thing every runaway prophet has ever believed. And then God says to him, go forth and stand upon the mount before the Lord. Elijah steps out of the cave. A great wind comes, so strong it tears the rocks loose from the mountain. But the verse says, and this is the strangest line in the chapter, the Lord was not in the wind. Then an earthquake. The whole mountain shakes. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. Then a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. Now watch what happens next. And after the fire, a still small voice. The Hebrew is kol damama daka. The literal translation is not still small voice. The literal translation is the sound of thin silence. Not a whisper, not a breath. The sound of silence itself made thin enough to speak. God did not chase Elijah with thunder. God did not punish him with fire. God whispered, in a sound so quiet that silence was the loudest thing on the mountain. And this is the part of the story that is about you. You are running from something right now. You know what it is. It might be the job you keep not applying for, the conversation you keep avoiding, the forgiveness you keep not giving, the phone call you keep not making, the faith you keep not committing to. The calling you keep telling yourself is for someone more qualified, more articulate, more healed, more holy than you are. And you have been telling yourself, like Elijah did, that you are the only one, that you have been forgotten, that no one is coming for you. You are not the first person to run. You will not be the last. The God who waited 80 years for a shepherd in Midian, the God who chased a prophet 2,500 miles across the Mediterranean in the belly of a fish, the God who whispered to a man in a cave in the voice of thin silence. That God is not done with you either. The pattern does not end with the Old Testament. After the resurrection, after Jesus had walked out of the tomb alive, Peter went back to fishing. The man who had walked on water, the man who had said, "Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God." He went back to his old boat, his old nets, his old life. I go a-fishing. Jesus appeared on the shore at dawn. 3 times he asked, "Lovest thou me?" 3 times, to undo the 3 denials, "Feed my sheep." Even Peter ran. The pattern is universal. There are 3 things I want you to take from this. The first is factual. God does not call qualified people. He calls people. The qualifying happens during the calling. The Bible has no record of anyone being ready before God called them, not one, which may be the most freeing thing in the entire book. The second is personal. If you are currently running, you are not disqualified. You are in good company. Every name in this video sits in the Hall of Faith in Hebrews chapter 11. Their running did not erase their calling. Yours will not either. And the third is the hardest to say without crying. The God who waited 40 years in a Midian desert for an 80-year-old shepherd. The God who chased a prophet 2,500 miles across the Mediterranean in the belly of a fish. The God who whispered to a man in a cave in the voice of thin silence. That God is not done with you. The tree you collapsed under is not the end. It is the place where an angel comes with bread. Now, I want to hear from you. Which prophet's running looks most like your own? The hiding of Gideon? The 5 excuses of Moses? The I am a child of Jeremiah? The luggage of Saul? The boat of Jonah? Or the tree of Elijah? Tell me in the comments. Here is the strange truth at the center of every story you just heard. They all ran. They all collapsed. They all gave up. And God, every single time, caught them. He is patient. He is faster than you. And whatever you are running from right now, He is already there, waiting at the other end, with bread baked on coals, and a voice in the silence.